Hey guys, thanks for coming back to the channel. I am Shayla Nettey. I'm a medical doctor and I have a passion for cooking healthy meals that taste super good. So I'm becoming a plant-based chef. I'm already a plant-based chef. In today's recipe, I'm going to be talking about a new favorite recipe of mine, butternut squash soup. It's going to have a couple twists and turns in it. So it's not just your regular run-of-the-mill soup. I always want to pack in some healthy ingredients. So the main three things that make this anti-inflammatory is going to be your turmeric powder, which is involved in my curry powder seasoning. That's really good at decreasing inflammation. Also going to be ginger, which is another anti-inflammatory spice. And then lastly, garlic, which is like my favorite go-to. Anytime I'm cooking with onions and garlic, hands down. And then everything else kind of builds from there. But I like this flavor. I like this recipe because it's got a lot of good flavor. It's very straightforward. It was actually a weeknight recipe. The thing I like about this recipe is that, with butternut squash, it's hard because you got to try to cut it. And then it's very dangerous if your knife's not sharp enough and it can roll away from you. There is no cutting of a raw butternut squash at all involved. And I got to give a shout out to Derek Sarno. I'll make sure to link him in the caption. But anyways, let me not get ahead of myself. Let's get to the recipe. Hope you guys enjoy. So we're going to be using butternut squash. The other ingredients, at least for the base of the soup, it's going to be carrots. This is going to add a nice sweetness to it. I don't peel my carrots just to give it a little bit more fiber. I did wash them really good, and I'll chop off the ends that have the root part. But for the most part, we'll use the whole thing. And then I'm going to use garlic, but instead of using minced garlic, I'm actually going to use a whole garlic bulb. And the reason I do that, I like to roast the garlic. So all of this is going in the sheet pan. I'm going to put it in aluminum foil, put a little bit of oil in there, and it'll come out nice and roasted and be real creamy and add like another boost of flavor. And then, of course, got to use onions. So I'm gonna roast that too. The oven's already set to 350. All right, so let's get to it. So here's the butternut squash. I've already scrubbed it and washed it, so it's clean. It kind of reminds me of roasting a whole sweet potato. Except with a sweet potato, I usually pierce it with the fork. We're literally just gonna take this. I have a sheet pan that already has parchment paper on it. And I'm just going to put that right on my sheet pan. And I actually changed my oven to 400 degrees instead of 350, just so it can roast a little bit quicker. I think this is going to take about an hour. So the rest of this stuff, I'm going to chop up our carrots, or not chop. I'm just going to take that root off, like I mentioned before, just the end. And then I'll probably just chop them in half, put them there. And then for the garlic, what I do is I hold it steady. And I just tap the top, so you can see the bulbs, the opening, and then place it in our aluminum foil. You can use avocado oil or olive oil. I'm going to use olive oil here, and just drizzle it. And then I just make sure I fold this all up so that it'll roast in the oven at the same time. Make a little bunch like that. There. So that goes there. Put our trash up. Always have a little garbage bowl on the side. I have some leftover onions from earlier, so I'm just take the skin off and roast this too, right there. And then I'm gonna take just half of this onion since I already have a quarter over there. I'm gonna cut the top, go straight down the middle, and then just take that skin off. All right, that's it. So we got our onions on, got our carrots, and got our garlic, and the oven's already set to 400 degrees. So I'm gonna go ahead. Oh, actually, before I throw it in there, I do need to add a little bit of oil to my carrots. And I don't remember if I said it in the beginning, but the carrots are going to add like a nice sweetness, especially when you roast them. It brings out the natural sugars a little bit more. So I'm just adding, it's not a lot. I'm just putting a little bit of the avocado oil on there so it can roast up nicely. So this is something you can like do as soon as you get home from work. If it's something you're doing after a work day, just make sure you can have all this stuff already prepped, have your carrots prepped, your onions prepped. Just put it all in a sheet pan, put it in the oven, set your timer for an hour while you're helping your kids with homework or while you're kind of relaxing, and this will all come out nice and roasted and super flavorful. Okay, so these are mushrooms. The thing about butternut squash soup, I like it, but to me, it's usually kind of lacking in terms of filling, something that's filling. I like the flavor, but I always want something more with it. So I'm going to add a couple things that I think will make it more complete and make it something that my family will like without making it too complicated. So these are just shiitake mushrooms. Normally I would try to cook these on the stove top, which would take forever, but I'm going to also put this on a sheet pan. So I'm just adding a little bit of olive oil. I'm not going to put any salt to this yet because the salt is going to draw out moisture and make it more, kind of make it more wet. which I don't want. I want this to be a little bit more on the crispier side while they're roasting. So that's all I'm doing. Olive oil, toss lightly, and then go ahead and put it on a lined parchment paper and then put that in the oven. You'll see only 30 minutes are left in the butternut squash. That's perfect. This can stay in there for about that time. If you don't have shiitake mushrooms, you could do any type of mushroom. It could be portobello, white button mushrooms. It doesn't really matter. This is just what I had. This is just what I had in my refrigerator, so this is what I'm using. But I like mushrooms because they add like a meaty taste to it, or really what's called umami, which can just make it make you not miss the meat part as much, make the flavor a little bit more complex without a lot of work. And the thing about mushrooms, once this goes in the oven, it's going to, because the water is going to get drawn out, this is going to shrink in size. So I'm trying to make sure they all have their own spot so they're roasted and not steamed. So we'll put that in on the bottom rack. All right, now this is that leftover onion that we had. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna chop this up with this garlic. This is gonna be the base for our broth. And I'm also gonna add in some beans. These are actually canned beans that I rinsed and drained. Cannellini beans, I like these because they're super creamy, but it's also gonna add in some protein because the butternut squash, it has a little bit of protein, but not much. So it's gonna add protein and it's gonna add in some fiber. So this, again, is going to make the meal a lot more complete without a lot of extra work. So I already have half of this. I'm just going to peel this outer skin. Keep this root on so that it makes it easier for me to hold my onion. Sharp knife. And I go straight down before I cut across. Turn. Some people go along here and go through. I don't think I need to be that specific because, again, this is a weeknight meal. Put this in it's not even trash. This is the bin I use for any veggies I cut, the scraps I should say, because I'll put all this in a freezer bag and put in the freezer for when I want to make my own vegetable broth. Sounds harder than it really is. All it is water, at least for me, all it is water, covering all the vegetable scraps and then adding salt and different herbs and stuff to bring out the flavors. And that's it. That way I'm kind of using all of my ingredients to the max. If you haven't seen my other videos or aren't familiar with cutting fresh garlic, you know, you have that little piece of skin there that's really hard to peel off on its own. So you just put the top of the knife and the blade side away from me. I take the heel of my hand and I tap, and that helps me break the skin. Before I started really getting into cooking, I used to use a lot of already minced garlic, which is completely fine to use in this recipe too, or in this technique I'm showing, because it's not really a recipe. It's more like this is kind of what I'm freestyling and doing with what I have. So if you don't want to do this, you can use minced garlic. I don't really know if there's a difference in the flavor, but I like garlic a lot. And I like the chopping part. It's meditative for me. So it's fun to me to actually do this part of cooking. Okay, before I chop this, I'm going to go ahead and get my avocado oil because my pan is hot. So I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons, just enough to kind of somewhat cover the pan, not a lot. And I like to use my bench scraper. I use this to take my onions right off the cutting board, so less mixing bowls that I have to use, less dishes that I have to do. And I'm gonna prop this right into the pan. And that's what you want to hear. You want to hear an immediate sizzle. One of them, the skin is still on there. There you go. So I'm gonna add a pinch of salt. That'll help draw out more of the moisture from the onions. Just sauteing this up. And this on like a medium high heat. This will probably take, man, I got a couple of different skins in there. This will probably take about 7-10 minutes to really get it to where I want it to be. So while that's doing that, I'm going to cut up the garlic. When I'm cooking at home, and when I'm cooking for others, I like to do it more like this, where while one thing is going, I'm prepping something else. So that way I'm not spending so much time only cutting things. And I'm just doing a rough chop of the garlic. And put it all together. Come along it like this. Alright, so now I got all my garlic on my bench scraper. That's kind of a lot of garlic, so I'll probably use half of that. I don't want this to be too garlicky. And the onions are still going in the pot. You got less than 20 minutes for the soup, so now I'm going to just clean up a little bit. Okay, I also went ahead and got some ginger and diced that up real quick. And then I also have some canned coconut milk. Just make sure you stir it really good so it's nice and creamy. And I have some veggie broth here, and they're my beans. So If you look, our onions are nice and caramelized. They're getting real nice and brown, not burnt, brown. That's more flavor. Now you can add tomato paste, but I want to add a little spice, and I don't have much left of this gochujang paste, which I get from Trader Joe's, which is a Korean fermented red pepper paste. So it adds nice umami, like meaty kind of blend, ton of flavor without having to add meat. I don't have a lot left. It does have a little bit of a kick if you're not used to spicy food, but a lot of that will be mellowed out with the coconut milk and with the broth. Like that. I'm also going to go ahead and add in half of this garlic, not all of it, just by half. That. And then I'm going to add in all of this ginger. So it's going to have a lot of flavor. It's going to smell really good in here. And the ginger and the garlic, anti-inflammatory, so that's really, really good from a health setting. The key thing for this step is to make sure you have enough oil in your pan so that your paste and your garlic isn't burning. Because this doesn't take but like maybe 30 seconds to a minute for this to really get going. And what you're doing is you're kind of cooking down the paste a little bit so you can add more flavor to the broth when we combine it with the butternut squash, which is almost done, hopefully, in the oven. And now what I'm going to do, kind of like almost like how you would do a curry. I have my own little curry blend that I made. And I'm going to go ahead and bloom the spices. And all that means is I'm putting it in the oil. I put it in now so that the flavor is not too... It really just makes the flavor taste better, if that makes sense. But you got to have oil. So that way it doesn't burn the spices, which will make it taste very bitter, which we don't want. Stirring, stirring, stirring. If you see it stick, you can even use a wooden spoon. Like this. I'm going to add just a little bit coconut milk, not much. And take my spoon and help kind of get all the rest of that out. Look how pretty that looks. I only have a little bit of sage, so that's some sage, and drop it in there. Sage goes really well with butternut squash. And because I'm doing like a curry version, I'm going to also add in this fresh thyme. Normally I'd like take this and put a twine around it. I don't feel like doing that. I'm just going to add it right in. This is veggie broth. It's probably about 1.5 cups. And so I'm going to let this simmer. Look how much those mushrooms, look how much they've dehydrated and shrunken down. So I think this is exactly where I want it. I'm going to do 2 things while it's hot. Pinch of salt, pinch of garlic and onion powder mixed. Toss it. We'll hit a black pepper. My maple syrup coconut amino glaze, which is 2 parts coconut aminos, 1 part maple syrup, 1 part garlic powder. I'm just pour like half of this on here. Toss it real good. Put this back in the oven for like 1 minute, just so the glaze can kind of stick on the mushroom a little bit. Ooh. So there's our butternut squash. Look at that. Whoa. I should be able to stick this skewer straight through. And it goes straight through. A little bit tougher right there in the middle. So I think maybe 10-15 more minutes, actually. Put that back in the oven for another 15 minutes. My daughter tasted some of the broth, and she's asking if she can have some because it tastes that good. So since that broth is there, now what I'm going to do, go ahead and add these beans to it. Take these mushrooms out. I almost forgot about these mushrooms. Mushrooms are done. These are going to go on top. So we're just going to let these beans, they're already cooked. The beans are already cooked, but I want them to absorb all this flavor. Just a little more broth. That. Just a touch more coconut milk. Spice. The crushed bell pepper flakes. And let this simmer. The top one. Ooh. Yeah. That's, whoa. Yeah. Probably got to let this cool a little bit so that it can make it easier for me to peel. I'm going to take the rest of it and start blending. I'll take these carrots. Pop them right in. onion. Actually, not the whole onion, because there is a little part right there that we don't want. So I'll take that edge off. Roasted onion. Other roasted onion. And then here's our roasted garlic. And squeeze it right out. Ooh, that's hot. Probably should wait. Don't be like me and be patient. I'm about to burn my hands. I should be waiting because it's still pretty hot. But look how easy it is to peel the skin now, because it's like shriveled up. See where the skin shriveled up? And literally, I'm just, look how, if I push, how soft that is. That is so, it looks like a sweet potato. Like I'm peeling a sweet potato. That is so cool. I don't think I'm ever going back trying to chop this again. It took about an hour and 15 minutes for one butternut squash to get peeled. Or to be roasted, I should say. That's not bad. I'm going to cut it in half and then remove the seeds. So I'm going to just scoop it with my spoon. I'm taking the seeds and all like that real stringy stuff too. My great grandmother, when she would cook, she would pick up stuff like this super hot. I never understood how she could. And I think like the more you cook, the more your hands lose their nerves. Now I'm gonna just scoop all of this, including the juice, right into the blender. It almost looks like sweet potato. So I'm gonna go ahead and blend this. And I should say I have a top here, so I'll release some of the heat so that it doesn't be too bad. Wow. Oh my gosh. It tastes so good. That's delicious. I'm gonna add a little bit of this coconut milk in there. And a splash of this veggie broth. I'm gonna take this base and add it to our beans. Add a little bit more coconut milk. Thin it out some. Add a little bit of this jerk seasoning, just a little bit of a kick to it. What I like to try to do is try to roast some of this more. Put this on top as like a crispy base. A little bit of avocado oil. Put this back in the oven. See what happens. Have this mushroom seasoning when you add this because it does add a nice little umami kick. And then because I know I have cream in here, I want to break that acid. I want to break that cream with the acid. So I have a lime here. I'll juice this lime. You can see how creamy it is now. You can still see the beans in there. And the thyme. Can't even see the onions. They've basically been cooked down. And the ginger and the garlic. That initial flavor base. I'm going to hit one more kick of this curry blend. It's got a nice spice level to it. I like the flavor, but I need a little bit more acid. So I'm going to use these sun-dried tomatoes that are in olive oil. So help break through the fat from the coconut milk. I think next time I do this, I'll roast some tomatoes too. Since those tomatoes are julienne, I think I'll do instead is I'll blend up a portion of this with the beans. Put it in there. Scoop of the soup with the tomatoes and the beans. I'm going to blend this back up. Now I'll add that back. It's a little bit thicker. Yeah, that's what I want. I took out the remaining squash, so it's got like those nice little brown bits there. I'm gonna put that on the top. So let me show you how I'm gonna plate it. In my bowl, so I have some orzo that I made before. I'm gonna actually add this as a base on the side here. This, my ladle, some of the mushrooms. This is some of the actual roasted squash. Some cilantro, a little drizzle, coconut milk. And there's our orzo pasta. Excuse me. And there's our butternut squash soup with the side of orzo pasta. Now, the day that I recorded this video was actually a practice run for a client. I was going to do the butternut squash soup for them. I did it for them. They loved it so much, but then they gave me a really genius idea. She was basically saying, this would taste good as like a pasta sauce. So I decided to try that. So if you're not as interested in the soup version of this, you can use it as a pasta sauce. So just yesterday, actually, from my family's dinner, I took the butternut squash soup that I had left over and I combined that with my pecan meat. I'm going to have to do a separate video on that because it came out so good. It made that almost like a bolognese sauce. And then I combined that with the butternut squash, added some pasta water, and used rigatoni pasta. And then I topped it with some Italian oyster mushrooms, which I've never had before until I found out about that we have a mushroom farmer in High Point, North Carolina. So that's my guy now. Sprinkles Mushroom Farm. If you're in North Carolina, check them out. Not sponsored, just really good mushrooms. But anyways, I put all that together, and this is just a little quick preview. You can see it came out so good. And then I sprinkled like spinach on top. It's beautiful. That's going to be added to the menu for sure. So that was my client who recommended that. But yeah, so if you're not interested in the soup, or if you're looking for a different way to use the butternut squash, you can use it as a pasta sauce essentially. But if you are looking for other recipes outside of this, make sure you check out how I make my black bean burgers. They're like a jerk inspired burger, super tasty. But thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next video.